Yeah, boy. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Giants Collective. I am your guy, Bad Dog, along with Adriana, Anthony, and the entertainer. And we definitely got some stuff to talk about, finally, after all these months of having nothing but a bunch of speculation. Now, before we get started, I just want to say this. I want to put out an APB on our guy, Borna, one of the producers of the show. He didn't text it all today. Normally he texts, and I know he's a Chargers fan. He was a little distraught. So, Borna, if you're watching, I hope you're doing well. And, of course, he's a Laker fan, and, they got injuries. They lost to the Nets, so I know he's struggling right now. So the Giants did make some moves, and we're going to go through and see exactly what everybody thought about the moves. And of course, there's one move that they haven't made yet, which we're still waiting on. I think we all know what that is. That's the big one. That's the quarterback. And we'll discuss that before the stream ends as well. So, Adriana, you always start with the lady first. What did you think about Joe Schoen and the New York Giants' moves here at the tampering period of free agency?
I like what he's done with the defense. I like the cornerback move. I think Adebo is going to be good. I think the money is fine for what he is. Obviously, the biggest concern is him coming off this femur injury, but it looks like he's going to be healthy and ready to go. So that's exciting. And I really like the Javon Holland move. I was surprised by it because I really didn't think that safety was going to be a priority in free agency, but I like it. I think it's a great addition. I think if you look at just those two signings, you have to feel significantly better about our defense than you did 48 hours ago. So I'm really excited about that. My concern still is Shane Bowen, but now maybe he has some more talent. Let's see if he can work around it. So I like those. Obviously, the first signing being a defensive tackle was not really exciting. I do like the Golston signing. I think that was good. The offensive linemen are fine. I would just say with where I'm at now, I think Joe Schoen has made some good moves. I hate Aaron Rodgers for being a drama queen. And I still am waiting on the quarterback and the right guard. I'm still holding out hope that even though he signed swing tackles, the right guard is coming soon. But what I will say is I have a little bit more faith in Joe Schoen than I did 48 hours ago for the biggest reason being that I think he's learned from his mistakes. I don't think he's a king GM. I don't think he's amazing. Obviously, I still have my concerns, but I'll give him a little bit of credit because I think after 3 years, he's finally learned and is correcting some of this mistakes that he's made. One of them being, not re-signing a good safety in Xavier McKinney. I think there's multiple reasons why that didn't happen, but not having a veteran last year obviously bit them in the ass. So I think he learned the hard way from the safety and the cornerback position. I'm glad that he brought in some good talent there. And same thing with the swing tackle. Look, they didn't bring in, Andrew Thomas 2.0, but after back-to-back years of not having a swing tackle and forcing Azudu into that role, I'm glad that he actually brought in two players who have tackle experience. So, I don't think they're going to, again, be able to fill in for Andrew Thomas if he's out and be good, but I'm just glad it's not Azudu. So I think he's finally learning, and that gives me a little bit of optimism.
So you mentioned they didn't center right guard. Would you guys take a flyer on Mekhi Becton?
I had a dream the other night. The Giants signed him for 10 years. Like, this is how insane.
That's a horrible dream.
I was tossing into
That's 10 years. But
I wake up, I'm checking Twitter. Well, he's only like 26 or something.
Yeah,
he's pretty young.
Yeah.
I'm like checking Twitter. I'm like, am I a psychic? Did I put this out there and it really happened? And obviously it hasn't, but I was like,
10 years would be quite a contract, but I'm sitting there looking, I'm like, he had a good year. Now, of course, everybody plays well for Philadelphia because they're a great team, but
yeah,
I thought it might not be a bad idea. Anthony, I know you are tougher on Joe Schoen than any of us in this building, I guess you could say. I don't know what you want to call it. How did you feel he did in the free agency?
I have to say on that, though, real quick, it was very funny on Twitter today. I said something about Joe Schoen, and someone was like, oh, now you have something bad to say. I'm like, where have you been? I'm known on this show for being too tough on him. Where have you been, good sir? Anyway, I think he's done a good job so far. Like, I'm always fair is how I feel. I don't think that I'm harsh on intentionally. I don't think, I criticize just to criticize. I think the Giants have been really bad for the last 2 years. So I've had every reason to criticize. So When they do good things, I praise them. When they do bad things, obviously I criticize. And so far, I think he's done a good job. But what I will say is that it's all going to be for not if they don't get a quarterback who can elevate this offense, because that is the number one key piece that they claimed they were missing. That's why they moved on from Daniel Jones midseason. That was what they tried to sell us at the bye week. That's what they tried to sell us after the season, was that they were quarterback away. They better go ahead and get that quarterback. I don't care if it's Rodgers. I don't care if it's Russell Wilson. I don't care if they trade up to 1 for Ward, if they stick and pick Sanders at 3. They better get a quarterback in here. Otherwise, all of this really is for naught, and Joe Shane's probably just going to get fired anyway. So it doesn't really matter. But I will say for the Javon Holland signing, the thing about that I'm obviously surprised about, same as Adriana, I'm very shocked that he went ahead and did that, considering they let Xavier McKinney walk last offseason. But I want to contextualize it and also point out the fact that the Giants got a 3rd-round comp pick for Xavier McKinney. So if you want to go through this frame of reference here, you could say that the Giants technically traded away Xavier McKinney for Javon Holland plus a 3rd, albeit they also had a poor season this past year without McKinney, and obviously that affected some of the other players in their secondary, like Banks and so on and so forth. But you can look at it that way and feel pretty positive. And what I really like about the the Paulson Adebo sign is where I wanted to go to. Ball skills, right? Deonte Banks is always there in coverage, but never gets his head turned around. Right. And the number one thing that Paulson Adebo is good at, he gets his head turned around. More forcing completions over the last 2 years than any cornerback in the NFL, and he missed 10 games. So that is just an incredible stat that makes you buy in to that young man's talent. And then what I wanted to say about Darius Slayton, I love that deal, man. I think that's a great contract. Yeah. I know a lot of Giants fans really don't like it. Relative to the wide receiver market, I actually thought he was going to come in at a higher price point. I think that's a great signing. And like I was saying on last week's show, I think the wide receiver market this offseason is very poor. I didn't think there were that many good WR2s in free agency, and I don't think this draft class is all that strong at that position, even though it has been strong for the last 3 years. I think everybody expects the wide receiver class to be strong. That was just 3 years of an anomaly. I don't know how that happened. It can't happen every single year, and this is the down year at wide receiver in the draft. So I think Slayton makes sense. He's a great locker room leader, and I think that's one of the reasons that the Giants probably got that deal done. I think he's been a good player consistently for years and years for the Giants. And again, looking at the market, Khalil Shakir and the money he's making, Tutu Atwell, the money he's making, Gabe Davis, the money he's making, $12 million per season for Darius Slayton is a great deal, especially considering it's guaranteed for 2 years. And that 3rd year, you can pretty much move on from that contract. So all 3 of those big signings for the Giants, I feel really positively about them. I think that Joe Shane and company have done a really good job so far. But again, holding my breath here, waiting to see who the quarterback's going to be.
Do you think the thing with Slayton, because some things I've seen obviously is, he got 3 years, $36 million, is that they gave him that money, but they wouldn't give it to Saquon. People are still hung up on Saquon, and people have got to let Saquon. But look at it, he's even got her choking up down there because Saquon. She's sick of Saquon. It's how many times?
It's apples and oranges. It's apples and oranges.
It is, but this is what Chris. This is what they're saying, though. Again, I don't agree with it, but yes,
it's just the talking point. It's just every. So when we sign, if we sign Jameis Winston at $10 million a year, are we going to say, oh, well, that we could have given Saquon Barkley? It's apples and oranges to compare a wide receiver to a running back in terms of the market. It's
I agree, but this is the people anything you know.
No, I saw it on Twitter.
I saw the war zone. Chris, how did you feel Joe Shane did?
Anthony took one of my talking points about the safety. I thought it was a really good point. I saw a couple of people bring that up, that essentially by getting the 3rd-round comp pick for McKinney, you end up getting a 3rd-round pick. You use the money that you would have used on McKinney on the safety with Holland. And I think a big fear for a lot of people going into free agency was that Joe Shane was going to think about the immediate future and not much else. Now, some of this I think has to do with the players, because I think a pattern I've noticed in the NFL, especially over the last couple of years, players aren't looking to sign long contracts. They're not looking to sign those 5-6 year contracts. Dexter Lawrence probably regrets not signing a 3-year contract at this point, because the market is just jumping every year with all the money that the NFL is taking in. So maybe Shane didn't even have the option to really do so much damage to the future cap space of the New York Giants, but not really much to complain about from that aspect, at least thus far. All these are 3-year deals, and Joe Shane continues to do what he's done in terms of free agency since he's had money to spend. I've talked about it on the show before. He prioritizes youth. He does. He did it with Runyon. He did it with Okereke. He's willing to spend extra money on players that are young, and he did it again. Paulson Adebo, 25. Holland, 25. Hudson, even the tackle, 25. A guy that he feels may not have hit his ceiling yet. Golston, Adriana brought him up. I thought he was an under the radar signing by the New York Giants.
Mm-hmm.
He can kind of play both inside and outside. Not going to completely compare him to Leonard Williams because that's not fair. But with that type of role, I think it was he's lighter. He's 275, but I think that was an under the radar signing by the New York Giants, and I think he could have an impact next year. Hopefully, replace the production that we got out of Azeez Ojulari because I do think we're going to lose him. But yeah, I mean, listen, our biggest weakness was in the secondary. You got the best safety on the market, and it was a pretty good deal, I thought. $15 million a year. I think when you factor in the raised market, that's less than what McKinney got last year, and he was the top market in this year's class, top safety in this year's class. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to use the term love because even after all this, I don't think this team's going to be great next year.
Yeah, we're still the Giants.
Yeah, I still think they're going to win 5-6 games with the schedule that we have, regardless probably of who we get at quarterback. But I like the things that he did. I think these are players that aren't going to just help for this year. They're going to help for the next 2 or 3 years. This is going to put Banks in a better role. Now he's a cornerback too. Same thing with Noob, and it's going to help the entire secondary, and it should help the pass rush as well. You think about a guy like Kayvon. Now he's playing with the best secondary he's ever had in his career. Second year opposite Burns. He should benefit from this as well. I think the defense is going to be good next year.
I'll tell you this.
And also Darius Slayton. I meant to mention him. I completely agree with Anthony. I think a lot of people flipped out about that deal because they're just sick of the same old, and I get it. And some people just want change for the sake of change. And I'm not the biggest Darius Slayton fan. And I would have preferred to get T. Higgins if he was available or even a Godwin, but they weren't. And if you look at the free agent market at the wide receiver position, and you know we're more than likely going to take a quarterback early in this year's draft, you want to support that quarterback as best you can day one. And I think if they would have just let Slayton walk, they would have just had another hole that they wouldn't have been able to fill. So not that I'm like super excited. I'm surprised because I thought Slayton was going to look for greener pastures. I didn't think he'd want to come back here. But when you look at the market, like Anthony said, I'm not going to say it was a steal of a deal, but I don't think we overpaid. That's wide receiver 3 money in today's NFL.
Who's their wide receiver 2? Wandale?
I think it's him right now. I think
the only reason I asked is because you said wide receiver money.
Yeah. So, but we're not paying for a wide receiver 2, but he's the wide receiver 2.
I love what he did in the secondary. I mean, we mentioned this before. They had 4 interceptions as a unit last year. It's freaking pathetic. I think they might have had 4 interceptions as a team. And one of those was by the linebacker, Muasa, I believe, who had one of those interceptions. So we didn't have an interception for McKinney had more interceptions than our team did. So obviously it was a bad look. And yes, that was a point of contention was how are you going to let McKinney walk and to give Colin the same type of money? And as I mentioned, I might even responded to Anthony on Twitter about this. And I just said, I mean, I don't know why they did it, but perhaps it had something to do with the ATV accident. He also was not the biggest proponent of Wink Martindale and had stuff to stay. So he's a little bit outspoken against the coaching staff. Maybe they just didn't feel like he was the guy or he was, he kind of soured on the Giants and they didn't want to bring him back. But I really do like what they did in the secondary because obviously it was a very weak point. And it can be picked on if you don't have a great pass rush. And we did for a little while, but then it kind of fell off. And if you're not getting pressure on the quarterback, I don't care how good your secondary is. If the quarterback can sit around there and scan for 7 seconds, guys are going to get open. But when you strengthen the coverage skills, it's also going to make your pass rush better because if the quarterback has to hold on to it for an extra half second, that can allow the pass rush to get there. And yes, Kayvon Thibodeau with Dexter Lawrence and, Brian Burns, you would think that he could have a breakout type season. We hope. Because we've been waiting. He's shown flashes, but he hasn't really been the guy. Hopefully that happens this year. Mekhi Becton's still there. I would definitely take a flyer on Mekhi Becton. I don't think he have anything to lose. I don't think he would command that much money. He had a good year at Philadelphia. And again, Chris, to your point, he's young. He's 26 years old. He was top 12 pick. I forgot exactly where the Jets picked him. But, there was talk about us drafting him that year as well. The biggest question was his size, because they might have thought he was going to balloon up to 400 pounds, and he's a big guy. But all linemen are big guys. You dream about the big guys, Chris. You know all about it. I was satisfied with Joe Schoen. I wouldn't say I was like ecstatic, but for what he had to work with and what was out there, I think he did as good of a job as he possibly could. And I also like what Anthony said because, I get this. I love when people get on my case. They say I defend Joe Schoen or I defend this guy. Or then they'll turn around and say I'm too hard on this guy. And much like Anthony, I always say criticism where it's fair, praise where it's warranted. This is what I do. It's what I've done for 7 years in my channel. I don't criticize just to criticize. People are like, you love the Daniel Jones signing. I'm like, I did at the time. But I can be wrong, just like our GM was wrong. Things happen. Shit changes, man. Situations change. So I like what he did. This is one part of it, obviously. And now the next big part is going to be the draft. But we still don't have a quarterback. We have Tommy DeVito. This is our quarterback going into the year. QB1, Anthony. Who's our quarterback? Who do you think we're going to get? And if you want to, I know Adriana's foaming at the mouth, ready to just rip into Aaron Rodgers, but I don't blame her. I'm waiting for it myself. I'm waiting to watch it. Who do you think is going to be our quarterback?
I don't know anymore. Listen, if my guess last week was Aaron Rodgers, I thought that's the way it was moving. But now that Aaron Rodgers, listen, if you're putting it into his perspective, why would he choose the Giants over the Steelers? I keep going back to that, and I don't see the reason. If this is your last shot at going to the playoffs and winning a Super Bowl, this is what you want to do. You want to end your career on a high note. Go to the team that hasn't had a single losing season in 18 years. Not the team coming off of a 3-14, right? That only makes sense. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. Why would he choose to go anywhere but the Pittsburgh Steelers? It wouldn't make sense to me. They've got weaponry. They've got a great defense. They just went to the playoffs. He could go to the playoffs with the Pittsburgh Steelers. With the New York Giants, that doesn't feel as certain. Now, I honestly think he's waiting to make his decision because he's waiting to see if the Minnesota Vikings get involved. Mm-hmm. That's what I think. I think he wants to play in the NFC North. I think he wants to follow the Brett Favre path again, and I think he wants to throw the ball to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. That's what I think is going on here with Aaron Rodgers. I could be wrong. I totally could be wrong. Maybe he wants to stay in New Jersey. I know he's got that house that he bought that he really likes, whatever. Maybe he ends up a New York Giant, but I don't see it happening anymore. I just think he's definitely going to one of those other two situations. Russell Wilson is why I think the New York Giants are going to land, because I think they're going to realize that they're probably not going to get Aaron Rodgers. And when they have this visit with Russell Wilson on Friday, I think they're going to do everything in their power to make sure he doesn't leave the building. My fear, though, is that he's visiting on Thursday with the Cleveland Browns, and that's scary because Kevin Stefanski is a very good coach, and he can make a compelling pitch to Russell Wilson. We just re-signed Myles Garrett. We did this in free agency. We're getting rid of Deshaun Watson. We picked number 2 overall. We can add all this talent around you. You could throw to Travis Hunter, and that might be compelling for Russell Wilson. So if that happens and he goes there, I don't know, Joe Flacco, Jameis Winston, whoever, it doesn't matter. Now you have to try and convince the Titans to trade down from number 1 so you can go up and get Cam Ward, in my opinion, because if you don't do that, I guess we're running it back with Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito. What are we going to do then? I have no idea, other than a Joe Flacco or somebody else, and I really don't want to see that happen. So the Giants, I think, right now, because they're on such thin ice, it feels like with Aaron Rodgers, just cut it off and go all in for Russell Wilson. Don't even let him get on that flight to Cleveland tomorrow. Make him an offer tonight that he can't refuse, and just make sure that you get a quarterback that can actually win you some games in 2024. If you actually want to save your, or 25, if you want to save your jobs and you want to be here long-term and you don't want everything to get blown up, all this hard work that you just did this offseason, you better get a quarterback in here that can start 17 games for you. That would be Russell Wilson to me. That would not be Joe Flacco. It would not be Jameis Winston. They're fine. They're serviceable, but truly they're more backups than they are starters. Russell Wilson could start for you. The Giants need to make sure that they get him, in my opinion.
All right. To piggyback off you, you mentioned all the reasons he should go to Cleveland. Couldn't you say the same thing for the Giants, right? We're coming off a bad year as well. Look at all the free agent moves we made. We're picking 3rd in the draft. You're throwing to Malik Neighbors, right? Couldn't you make the same argument, say we're going to get a really good kid here at number 3, and look at all the moves you made in free agency? And like I said, he was the top rookie wide receiver last year, set all kinds of rookie records. And to your point, with DeVito, Jones, and Drew Lock and Boyle throwing them, for crying out loud. I mean, and maybe the biggest selling point, it's New York. It's not Cleveland. So, I mean, but I agree with you, Anthony. I like Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson should have been a Giant many years ago. Chris, who do you think is our quarterback?
I think we're going to end up with Russ. I'm not locked in on it, and I'm sure of it. But if I had to make a pick today, I would say Russ. And it feels like the Aaron Rodgers thing never made sense. I mean, it made sense from the Giants' perspective, but it never made sense from Aaron Rodgers' perspective. And the reports came out that he was the one that made contact with the New York Giants. And the more that this prolongs, the more it feels like the reason why he made contact in the first place was to try to drive up the price on the teams that he actually wants to go to. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, is ultimately going to be the team that he goes to because they make the most sense for all the things that Anthony said. And I'll even add another point. The Steelers, if you look at all the possibilities, whether it be the Giants, the Vikings, even though I don't think that's happening, as I said on Twitter, I think if they wanted to go the route where they were going to spend money at that position, they would have just tagged Darnold. They elected not to do that. I don't think he's going to go there. But when you look at the Vikings, the Giants, and the Steelers, of those three scenarios, the one that gives him the clear path to get multiple years with that destination, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if his plan is to play another 2 years in the NFL as a starter, if that's something that he wants to consider, Steelers aren't going to be picking high enough to draft a quarterback next year. Giants are likely going to draft a quarterback this year. They're going to want to move on. And the Vikings drafted a quarterback last year who's clearly going to be the guy that they feel is the guy of the future there. So for me, everything makes sense for him to go to Pittsburgh. They have a chance to compete. They just got DK Metcalf. They go to the playoffs every year. They feel like they're a quarterback away. I'd be borderline stunned at this point as this continues to go along if Aaron Rodgers doesn't go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's what I think is going to happen. And Russell Wilson last year, if you recall, he did this with the Giants, only he visited with the Giants first and the Steelers second. Well, maybe this time around, the Giants, now that they have the second visit, they seal the deal like the Steelers did. I think ultimately that's what's going to happen. I think he'll be a New York Giant.
I forgot what I was going to say because I just had a freaking pop-up show in front of my damn screen. I had something I wanted to ask you, and I totally forgot it because this happens to me all the damn time. Adriana, we've been waiting patiently. Yeah. Go ahead, give us your opinion on Aaron Rodgers and what you think what the Giants are going to. Oh, I know what I was going to say, Chris. You mentioned DK Metcalf. They also have George Pickens. He's pretty damn good too.
Of course, yeah.
But Adriana, give us your thoughts on A-Rod. Go. Don't hold back. We know you won't. And who do you think is going to be the quarterback for the Giants in 2025?
I made a video last night calling him a selfish son of a bitch because that is exactly what he is. Today's Wednesday. So Monday night, the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers deal was basically done. Is what was all over the media. Okay. Then Tuesday, oh no, now it's between the Giants and the Steelers. We're probably going to have an answer at the end of the day. Well, it's Wednesday, end of day. Even Adam Schefter is like, I'm so annoyed with the Aaron Rodgers thing. The guy is drawing this thing out, blah, 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 whatever. This is why I don't want Aaron Rodgers on this team, because it's all about Aaron Rodgers and he doesn't give a shit about anyone else. And I know that there are reports that players in the building said, oh, he's a good teammate and he's whatever. And I just don't really know if I buy that. I'm sure fine, they had a good experience with him and whatever, but he has done so many things and is such a track record of being a narcissistic a-hole that literally only cares about himself, that why is he going to come to the Giants and all of a sudden he's going to be someone different? I think if he does come to the Giants, I think there's two things that would make him come here. I think number one is I do think that he's so narcissistic that he thinks that if he comes to the Giants, he can make this team win. He's Aaron Rodgers. He's going to say to himself in front of his mirror while he's doing ayahuasca that he has won 4 MVPs. And, you know, if Daniel Jones and them can get Malik Neighbors to over 1,000 yards, imagine what I can do. And I'm going to force them to bring in more offensive linemen. And they made good moves on the secondary. And, you know, Brian Dable was coach of the year and blah, blah, blah. I think that he could talk himself into, well, I'm good enough that I can make the Giants better. I think that's probably what it is. And that would be his version of being like, well, this is why I would go to the Giants. Also, they share a locker room. They share a stadium with the Jets, and he can give them a big FU to the Jets if he comes here and has a better experience. Plus, he doesn't have to move. I don't think it's going to be him the way that things are going, but I'm also like the fact that he's dragging it out so much. Part of me is like, there's no way he's just that dead set on the Steelers and he's just, you know, stringing along the Giants, who I have heard have offered him a good amount of money. And he's just kind of stealing it along. But then I'm also like, I just think he only cares about himself and he loves that everyone is so concerned about Aaron Rodgers. No other teams are making moves. Russ Wilson, Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco, Carson Wentz, none of them have been signed because everyone's waiting to see what Aaron Rodgers does, and he loves it. He's basking in it. And Adam Schefter said, oh, well, you know, we're on Aaron Rodgers' time, and no one knows how long it's going to be. He's right. So if I were the Giants, I would tell him, go F yourself. Russ Wilson's coming in the building, and I would do what Anthony said and not let him leave. And he's going to be our quarterback. We are done with you and your drama. We offered you a deal. We gave you a plan, blah, blah, blah. You know, It's been well over 48 hours. We're talking about a 1 or 2 year deal, okay? This man's not married. He doesn't have children. He doesn't have to worry about uprooting a family. He's not in the prime of his career. We're not talking about a 5 or 10 year deal. He's getting a 1 or 2 year deal that's not going to be life-changing. He's not going to the Super Bowl. Like, it shouldn't be that hard of a decision. He's drawing it out for no reason because he's a drama queen. That's why. And I don't want him anywhere near this team and this locker room because he's really just sent me over the edge with this.
See that.
Decision making.
I also read somewhere that I forgot who mentioned it. It might have been someone from sports media in Pittsburgh said that Aaron Rodgers is holding the Steelers hostage.
Yes.
Like that he is holding them hostage because literally, like you mentioned, what could he possibly be waiting for? You know, you really only heard those two teams. You kind of hear about Minnesota. Because Minnesota don't have anybody either. I mean, their quarterback right now is J.J. McCarthy, never taken an NFL snap, coming off a devastating knee injury. You have no clue. You don't have Darnold. You don't have Jones anymore. So they're going in fresh too. So maybe it does make sense for him to go to Minnesota. Maybe he's waiting for somebody else to get involved because he doesn't really want to go to Pittsburgh. And he doesn't want to go to the Giants. Who the hell knows? But I'm with you guys. I've never been the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan anyway. Even when, in his prime, I always thought he was a great quarterback. And I just don't like him. Chris will tell you that. I've never been enamored with Aaron Rodgers. I like another villain. His name is Tom Brady. That was always my villain that I liked. But that's because we beat his ass twice in the Super Bowl, too. I know he kicked Aaron Rodgers' ass in the playoffs. So, I mean, we beat, Eli beat the best of the best. But I don't see Aaron Rodgers. It's funny how things change in a week because last week when we did this, it was like he was minus 300 to go to the Giants. And now if you looked at the odds, they'd probably be much different. But I can definitely see the Giants going a different route. I don't think they should wait for him. I think, like you mentioned, Adriana, they should say, you know what, F you, enough's enough. We're not waiting anymore. We need a freaking quarterback. This is it. They need to just lay it down. This is it. You're either signing or you're not. Because if not, we're moving on. We're going forward. We're not going to sit here and wait for you. We have things we got to do. We got to get a quarterback in here. We got to win. Do you want to be that guy or not? If not, we're going to go somewhere else. And that's really what they got to do.
The Giants have enough having to deal with the Jets that they share a building with them. They don't need to now be clowning around like the Jets are and sit around twiddling their thumbs waiting for Aaron Rodgers to make a decision. Like, can we prove to everyone that we are not as bad and not as much of a clown show as the Jets? The Jets literally let him come in the building and do whatever he wants. Mike Tomlin, and as much as I think Brian Daboll is a good coach, but who needs a lot of help, I think that he would never allow Aaron Rodgers to pull the type of shit that he pulled with the Jets. And Mike Tomlin isn't allowing that. Right. So I'm like, I don't know what his angle is. Like, he went to the Jets, did whatever he wanted, but out of these two teams, whichever one he picks, he's not going to come in here and bring all his buddies and, talk whatever type of talk that we're going to go to the Super Bowl. So it's just absurd.
It's crazy. Speaking of odds, the stream is sponsored by BetUS. They have a lot of promotions going. They have a great promotion. Well, that's right up here. They have a great promotion going, as they always do. Now, free agency's done. And again, the odds of Aaron Rodgers have probably changed at this point. But there's a lot to bet on. You can bet on a free agency. You can bet on the draft. You can do futures bets, prop bets, anything you want to do. You can do it on BetUS. Like I said, they sponsor the stream. Let's hear from them right now. 40 seconds back after this. This video is being brought to you by the good people at BetUS. Do you like free money? You want to take advantage of a great promotion? Well, BetUS has a great deal for you. Go to BetUS and enter the promo code YouTube150 to get a 150% match deposit bonus on your first deposit and a 125% match deposit bonus on your second and third deposits, all the way up to $2,000 in bonus cash. Great customer service is 24/7, 365 days a year. Fastest payouts in the business within 24 hours. And 10% gambler's insurance against all your net losses as long as you stay active every 6 months. Terms and conditions apply, and when you gamble, please do so responsibly. Never bet more than you can afford to lose. That's right. So obviously there's a lot. You can also bet on other things besides football. Like I said, there's a plethora of things to have fun with on BetUS. Chris, out of all the quarterbacks that are available, who do you want the Giants to sign?
I mean, at this point, Russell Wilson, because I don't think we're getting Aaron Rodgers. I always thought
if they could get,
if all things were equal and the contracts were the same and the commitment was the same, I would say Rodgers. I think he's the best quarterback out there. But I don't think he's coming here. I think he's using the Giants, and I'm completely fine with Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson, from the way that at least I look at it, like I don't look at Aaron Rodgers as a guy that's going to come here and we're going to win a Super Bowl or we're going to make the playoffs. Like the value I saw in Aaron Rodgers when this started to creep up was he could keep this team somewhat competitive. Joe Shane will be able to keep his job, and it will take some pressure off the rookie quarterback, and he'd be a good mentor for the rookie quarterback to learn from. Russell Wilson could accomplish that too. Russell Wilson, in my opinion, is not quite as good as Aaron Rodgers, but he can accomplish that. He's not going to embarrass you. He's going to go out there. He's going to give you an opportunity to win 5 or 6 games this year, and you can ease the quarterback in. So for me, at this point, seeing that Aaron Rodgers, I don't think wants to come here, Russell Wilson basically accomplishes the same thing for me that I thought that he brought value to this football team this season. I don't view us being a Super Bowl team either way, and I don't want either Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers to be the starting quarterback in 2026. So it's a 1-year deal for me.
Let me throw a curveball in here because I've seen, again, these are just talking points, but I'm sure you guys must have seen this at some point. There was rumors about the Giants trading for Kyler Murray. Now, I don't know where this has come from, but who knows? I mean, it's crazy time. Adriana, is there any possibility that the Giants, I'm not saying Kyler Murray in particular, is there a possibility that they trade for a quarterback instead of picking one of these guys up off free agency?
I don't know. I know that obviously we know that they were really interested in Matt Stafford. And I think that when you look at that and you look at the fact that they're, offering Rodgers tens of millions of dollars, like they are, I think, showing that they feel like their back's against the wall and they have to win. If they're going to trade for anyone, I hope that it is not Kyler Murray. But the person who started that rumor, God bless, I'm going to start a rumor that we're going to trade for Joe Burrow because I don't know how that got so out of hand. Like the amount of people that were like, are we really trading for Kyler Murray? And I'm seeing these like graphics of him in a Giants jersey. I'm like, oh my God, make it stop, please. But I think I don't think it should entirely be out of the question because of what happened with Matt Stafford. They were willing to offer him so much money. I wouldn't entirely be surprised if we find out in a week or so that they, traded for another quarterback. The thing is, like, who are they trading for?
Yeah, I don't know.
They're going to have to give up a lot, regardless of who it is. And, there were always, of course, all these rumors. Oh, well, Josh Allen, because he's a Bill, the Giants are going to get him. The guy just signed a $330 million contract. Like he was never leaving the Bills. Yeah. So I really don't know. And now with Justin Fields off the table, I'm like, I think it's Russ Wilson or bust at this point.
Did that surprise you, Anthony, that Justin Fields went to the Jets? That I didn't see that coming at all.
No, I thought that it made sense for both parties because, first of all, he gets to reunite with Garrett Wilson, which is pretty cool, and they can grow together. Garrett Wilson, a little bit of a down year last season with Aaron Rodgers, wants to bounce back, do it with one of your best friends, basically. I think that's kind of a good logic there for both of them to follow, and also because it was a new regime stepping in and taking over the Jets, there's no pressure on them. They don't need to win right away. So if they flame out with Justin Fields and they only have 5 to 3 wins next season, they're probably safe anyway, and then they can draft a quarterback, and it's only a 2-year deal. So it wasn't a long-term commitment. I actually think it made so much sense. It's exactly what I wanted the New York Giants to do. However, we kept our regime in place, so we have to go down a different path. But if we had a fresh set of eyes and a new regime looking over this thing, yeah, I like Justin Fields, as I explained on the show before. But what I will say, I want to talk about this quarterback trade market because I think there are – okay, so there's one quarterback that I think is going to hit the trade market, and then there's one who I don't think is going to hit the trade market, but I'm going to put his name out there anyway. The first one being Kirk Cousins. I know that the Falcons are being adamant that they're not going to get rid of him. I don't buy it. I know that there was a report today that said that they're not bluffing. I still think they're bluffing. I still think it happens. It probably just happens closer to the draft. Sometimes some of those trades don't happen until later on in the offseason. So if the Giants really miss out on all of the quarterbacks that they desire, I think they could absolutely call the Falcons and make a pretty compelling offer and get Kirk Cousins over here if they really wanted to go down that route. I wouldn't want to go down that route. I don't think that's a great idea. But when you're out of options, you have to go create an option for yourself. Kirk Cousins could become that created option. And then the other one, and just in terms of who could potentially be on the trade block from the quarterback position, would be Brock Purdy because he's in a contract negotiation. I don't think he ever gets traded from the 49ers. I think they're going to pay him and he's going to get that contract. But considering he doesn't have that contract yet, and there is a little bit of a price disparity between the two parties, that would be the only other one. Kyler Murray's under contract. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, all these guys are under contract. The guys who aren't under contract and necessarily are looking for extensions are the guys you have to look for, or a bench player like Kirk Cousins. But last thing that I'll say on the trade, the Giants did just get an extra third-round pick. That's massive. It's a top 100 pick, too. Yeah. It's pick number 99 overall. If you look at Joe Schoen's history, in 2023, the Giants entered that offseason with 2 third-round picks. He took one of them and he traded it for Darren Waller. Then in 2024, he had 2 second-round picks. He took one of them, traded it for Brian Burns. He likes to do that. Now that they have 2 third-round picks, I absolutely do expect he's going to trade one of those 2 third-round picks. That's a trend for him now. So I don't know if that's going to be for a Kirk or a quarterback or for a right guard. I think is completely plausible in this scenario. Because, yes, they could draft a right guard at number 99 overall, not a plug-and-play starter. You could trade number 99 overall, become better day one if you get a starting right guard. Or maybe if they want to keep adding other positions, wherever, wide receivers aren't that expensive to trade for at this point either. I actually think there's a really good chance, though, that one of those 2 third-round picks, potentially in a package to move up to number 1, trade up and draft Cam Ward, whatever it is, I don't think that they're going to hold on to both of those third-round picks. I think Joe Schoen loves to make trades, and when he's got 2 picks in the same round inside the top 100, he sees that as good value to go ahead, draft with one of those picks, and pick up a player who can plug and play for you with one of those other 2 picks.
Let me ask you this: we haven't really heard anything about the Titans taking not drafting a quarterback, but like signing a quarterback. They haven't signed a quarterback, have they? I missed something. Like they're still the same, right? Is it?
Yeah, they still would love this.
Is it possible that they snag one of these free agents? I don't know if Russell Wilson has talked to them. I don't know if Jameis Winston's talked to them. Like I don't know. Is it possible that they need a quarterback, or do you think they're going to stay fast at one and take Cameron Ward? Like it's, we had all the speculation for the free agency, and now we kind of know where we sit outside of the quarterback situation. And now we get all the speculation of the draft. And we mentioned it last week. We said we would have a better idea of what they're going to do with their draft pick. Chris, do we have any idea what they're going to do with their draft pick? Because we still don't have a quarterback.
No, yeah, we don't. That's clear. I mean, they could clearly take Cam Ward. Like, I'm not ruling that out. I've said that I don't think they will. I've given my reasoning as to why, but I obviously wouldn't be stunned on draft night if they take Cam Ward. I think ultimately what they end up doing in free agency is they probably get like a Jameis Winston. I think there's been rumors that Winston would actually want to play there. I don't know why. But I could see him making sense because you're going to be drafting a rookie. He gets an opportunity to play for 6-8 weeks, whatever it may be. He probably gets paid a decent amount of money. If I had to guess, that's where I think Jameis Winston at this point probably ends up. But it's a guessing game at this point. But, yeah, of course, Cam Ward's certainly a possibility. And I thought Anthony brought up a really good point about Justin Fields and the Jets. That's exactly how I looked at it, too. First-year GM, you're in a – not that I'm saying it's equal because it's not, because Daniel Jones got a lot more money, but I looked at the Daniel Jones contract in a similar fashion in the sense that I thought it kind of gave Joe Schoen a few more years to build his team without overly committing at the quarterback position. I view it very similarly with the New York Jets. It's kind of a placeholder for a year or two as the new GM continues to get to build his football team. So from that standpoint, I thought it made sense for the Jets. Not the best deal. They probably overpaid a little bit for a guy that really has very little production at the pro level, but it made sense from that standpoint. It gives them another year or two to build the team. Everybody
overpays in free agency. Yeah. That's the fun part. But again, they overpay. It's funny because every year they say, they overpaid. They overpaid. But again, Chris, you've mentioned this a number of times. The cap goes up 10% every year, at least 10%. You're getting an extra 20, 30, 40 million. So every year there's a new market. And I forgot who mentioned it earlier. It might have been you mentioned Dexter Lawrence is probably kicking himself for signing that long-term deal now, right? And that's why guys don't want to get locked into these long-term deals because they know, hell, if I have 2 good years, my market value might have doubled.
That's the thing you could give Joe Schoen some credit for. Not only did he extend those guys early, he got them on 5-year deals, Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence. Now, of course, those players could always try to hold out and get extensions, but that was a smart move by Joe Schoen to lock those guys up to 5-year deals because the pattern you're seeing, Bad Dog, These players now, they want 3-year deals because they see how quickly this market's accelerating every year.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just gonna throw this out to the round table here. Do you guys see like a surprise move coming, or you think the Giants are pretty much done? It's just going to be that quarterback, whoever the quarterback may be, but that's the position and that's it. Or do you think there'll be like, because Brian Burns was a big surprise last year. I don't think any of us saw that one coming. Do you think there's a move like that for Joe Shane this year? I don't care who starts.
I do. I think there is a surprise coming. I don't know if it's a trade to one. I honestly do think that the Titans are leaning towards taking Cam Ward at number 1, but just getting that extra 3rd-round pick, having as many top 100 draft picks as the New York Giants have. If this was the Jets situation where they had all these top 100 picks and it's a new regime, yeah, you want to build through the draft. So you probably want to spend all of those picks on prospects. But for the Giants, Joe Shane, back against the wall, need to win some games in 2025. Take one of those picks, trade it for a player. I think that's realistic, and that's why I do think we are going to see some sort of surprising splash move. I think low-key sleeper. I know we just signed Darius Slayton, but the wide receiver market, we do see a lot of trades for wide receivers every offseason. I mean, didn't DK Metcalf, what did he get traded for? A 2nd or a 3rd?
Second,
right?
I think.
3rd.
Yeah.
And Debo got traded for a 5th, right?
Debo was a 5th. Cooper Kupp got cut, but even still, I like. One team that I look at is the Colts because they have a lot of good wide receiver talent. I wonder if one of those guys could shake free. I've mentioned Alec Pierce, I think, before on this show, and definitely on Fireside Giants. He's a player that I think maybe a 3rd gets it done. You can go out there, even though you just re-signed Slayton and you've got Wan'Dale. Wan'Dale's only in the final year of his contract. He could walk next offseason. What's your plan then? It's not Jalen Hyatt, obviously. Take one of those 3rds. If you need a proven talent, which the Giants need proven talents, go ahead and make a splash, or you could do it at right guard, wherever. But I think for this team and what they need and what their timeline is, since they're not really thinking as long-term as maybe we would all like them to, they're thinking about 2025. How can they win as many games as possible? Taking one of those 3rd-round picks and acquiring a proven veteran talent via trade makes a lot of sense. So I do think there's going to be some sort of surprising splash trade.
Yeah. I think if there's going to be I wouldn't consider a guard a surprise at this point. Now, maybe you'd be surprised if it was like a top of the market guard, like a Tevin Jenkins, someone like that. But I would actually be surprised if we don't sign some kind of guard. If there's going to be a surprise move at this point, I think it would be a wide receiver, like Anthony said. I don't know if it'll happen, but yeah, that's where I would lean in terms of a surprise move by the New York Giants. Maybe some wide receiver squirms free and they're able to get one for, I don't know who it would be, but that I could see that. I think that's a possibility.
Johnny, you think there's a surprise move coming?
I think there definitely could be. Part of me wants to say quarterback just because we saw them go after Stafford. So now they've gotten burned by Stafford. They're about to get burned by Aaron Rodgers. And I really wonder how much they like Ward or Sanders. And obviously we don't really know. Maybe they really love one of those guys and that is just going to be their pick at either 1 or 3. But part of me is like, if they really feel like they have to win now, I know Russ is coming in the building, but are they considering other options? And maybe this is where the Kyler thing stemmed from. Who knows? I've also heard a lot of fans talk about Trevor Lawrence, which I would never take on Trevor Lawrence's contract, but you never know. I mean, they were willing to pay Matt Stafford $55 million a year, which is what Trevor Lawrence is making. So obviously Matt Stafford is a lot more proven than him, but
he's also a lot older, man.
Yeah. I just think that because they have seemed to be a little bit aggressive at quarterback between Stafford and going after Rodgers, who's like the best possible free agent quarterback at this point, I wouldn't be completely shocked if maybe they pull a quarterback out of left field. And I don't know who it's going to be or what they're going to give up, but I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't be entirely surprised. And like Anthony said, with that 3rd-round pick, maybe that's just going to be added to the pile.
Well, it's funny. Anthony mentioned the pattern. Unfortunately, the pattern has sucked. So I wonder if he'll change the pattern because it hasn't worked. I mean, whatever Joe Shane has done hasn't worked. It's unbelievable. I can only speak for myself, but when they got here in 2022 and we won 9 games, I know we weren't a great team, but still, that was the first time we'd been over 500 at any time in 5 years. We were below 500 from the beginning of 2016 all the way up to the time those guys took. Well, maybe not. We were never above 500. I think we were 2-2 at one point. We were never above 500 from 2017 until 2021. For 5 years, under or not above 500 at any day And as soon as they got in, they were not below 500 any day in 2022. Won a playoff game. I had hope. I thought we figured it out. I thought he knew what he was doing. I thought they had plans. I said, this guy's prepared. They have plan A, plan B, plan C. Look at what they're doing. And then it just totally went to shit. It's just amazing how you look back, and we've talked about this before, how it's probably the worst thing that could have happened to them was winning that playoff game, because it seems like that set the franchise back instead of being able to build and grow off of that. It seems like it went completely backwards. We can't be any worse, man. The Eagles won a Super Bowl. Saquon Barkley ran for 2,000 yards. We won 3 games. Worst in franchise history. 10 losses in a row. Worst in franchise history. 8 losses in a row at home. Worst in franchise history. Ugliest uniforms in the history of franchise history. We can't do worse.
We didn't win a game at home this year, right?
We did. We beat the Colts.
Oh, the last game. That's right. Otherwise, we would have been 0-9. Okay,
and now Daniel Jones is there. Isn't it ironic how that all freaking connects? That Daniel Jones is a cult now. Isn't that weird? I don't know. It's weird.
I'm interested to see how he does this year. If he gets the start, we'll see. But
he's going to be in a quarterback competition. I think that's.
Oh, they didn't give him $14 million not to compete. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. Let's get to a couple of these really quick. John, thank you so much. He says, stack the defense with Abdul Carter. I have a feeling Abdul Carter's not getting there 3. Wide receiver in the second, or Dart and get Arch or Aller next year. Well, I don't think you would take Dart. Well, actually, to Anthony's point, you could take Dart and then go that way route next year. Giants ain't doing shit this season. Schedules Brewer take a page from Philly and stack the defense from the draft. The Arch thing I've said all the time, you can't just kick the can down the road. If you're that bad, though, and you end up with Arch, it's fine. But you can't sit there and play for Arch. You still got to take a quarterback at some point in this draft, I think. I forgot where I left off. Adriana, what do you think? I mean, I agree. Defense is extremely important. I could not agree more. I'm a guy from the 80s. I saw those defenses. I know what it means. Even in the 2000s, we won 07 and 11. We know defense was a strength of this team. So what do you think? I mean, Shane obviously addressed it in the secondary. So what do you think about John's suggestion there?
Yeah, I was thinking about that because most of the moves that he's made in free agency have revolved around the defense. So a part of me felt like, is he focusing on building up the defense now with free agents? So in the draft, he can have more flexibility to go either quarterback or wide receiver or whatever he wants to do from an offensive perspective. Maybe he wants to get a tackle or a guard, but he now maybe has more flexibility to do that, even though I know some of the top rated players coming out from picks 1 to 5 are defensive players. So I'm not entirely sure what he's thinking, but I do like that idea. And I love Carter. I think if he's there at 3, you have to take him. But yeah. I love that idea. I'm on board with the defense wins championships. I mean, we have seen some pretty ugly defenses over the years. And I think, last year I was most excited about the defense, and I'm feeling like I could feel like that this year too. So I'm on board with that. I'm fine if they get a quarterback in later rounds. I mean, I would prefer if they get Cam Ward, but if he goes first overall, it is what it is. It's going to be, Jaden Daniels and Drake May all over again. If the Titans love Cam Ward or the Browns love Cam Ward, it doesn't matter what we offer them. They're not trading out of that spot. So if he's not there at 3, then so be it. Go defense and then get another quarterback later. I'm on board with getting a quarterback again next year. I think everyone needs to shut the fuck up with the Arch Manning stuff. Like, it's just so unrealistic. It's unbelievable to me. Like, even if we have the first overall pick next year, it doesn't matter because he's not coming out in 2020.
Right, he graduates. They all graduate.
Right. And if you're Arch, can we just look at this logically for 1 second and then I will move on. But if you're Arch Manning, there are 32 teams in the NFL. You have 2 uncles who won Super Bowls with 3 teams. Why in any world would you want to have to live up to one of your uncle's legacies by going to one of those 3 teams when there are 29 other teams that you can go to? You think he wants to come to New York, and if he doesn't win 2 Super Bowls, we are all literally going to hate him?
Yeah, look at the pressure Eli was under just from being related to Peyton. So
Giants fans literally still hate Eli Manning because of how his career ended, and he won us 2 Super Bowls. Like, it's so insane. It has to stop. The Arch Manning stuff has to stop. We can get Garrett Nussmeier. We can get Aller. We can get any other quarterback next year. It's not going to be Arch Manning. But I agree that the schedule is going to be tough this year. I don't think that even if we have Aaron Rodgers, we're going to win 10 games. So I would like to see at least the defense make some plays and be good this year.
Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the Arch Manning stuff is ridiculous. And actually, to Adriana's point, I always find it funny when people act like the Giants have some sort of claim. Why don't the Colts or the Broncos have the same claim, or the Saints, where Archie played? There's a lot of teams that have that same claim. In fact, I would even argue because he's playing, he's a Southerner. I mean, there's so many different places he could go. The Saints, like, makes a lot of sense, but he's just going to get drafted wherever he gets drafted. And the Giants shouldn't be waiting for the opportunity to draft Arch Manning. Just go ahead. And if you draft a quarterback this year and you don't like him, you draft another one. I've made that stance of mine very clear many times before. You have to throw darts at the board for the quarterback position. They got to draft a quarterback at some point in this draft. And then for everything else, whether it's stacking the defense through the draft or whatever, just draft the best player available. And those things will happen naturally. When you try to force it and you try to force for need and you try to say, okay, I'm going to draft this position in this round and this position in this round, that's how you get the product that the Giants have had for the last 10 years. Those are the two things that I'm super adamant about. You can't wait for the quarterback and you cannot draft for need. So just keep drafting best player available. The Giants haven't done that nearly enough, in my opinion, as Chris and I have argued against one another about in recent episodes. But I just think that's the only strategy that makes sense for this team. And I will say this.
What have we argued about? What have we argued about?
We've had a disagreement on how much the Giants draft for need or don't. We've disagreed.
I think there's some legitimacy to that. I think it's a little bit overblown with the early rounds. Yeah.
But what I will say, to Joe Shane's credit, I think he's done a good job filling in a lot of needs so far through the first few days of free agency. So I have a little glimmer of hope in me that he's doing this to set it up so he can just go best player available in every round of the drafts outside of getting the quarterback, which is what I'd like to see happen. So I will give him credit there.
Yeah. Oh, Bad Dog's gone.
I think it's up to you, Chris.
I will piggy. I was just looking at Anthony the whole time. I will piggyback off of what you had to say. As far a lot of what you guys had to say. Listen, I'm completely open to Abdul Carter. First off, let's start there. I don't think he's going to get to us, but it's possible. The more that you're hearing about Cam Ward potentially going one, I'm still thinking he won't, but I'm starting to be more open to that being a strong possibility. It's entirely possible that with Myles Garrett already on that team, they could go Travis Hunter at 2. And then all of a sudden you're staring at the guy who I feel is the best player in this draft. And then it comes down to, do you want to go Shedeur Sanders or do you want to go with Abdul Carter? And I'm not even saying I would be in favor of taking Shedeur Sanders in that scenario. I just think Joe Shane would. But Abdul Carter would be my guy. I'm not against this idea of hunting on the quarterback position. If you don't love one here with one of these, with the third overall pick, maybe taking one day 3, whatever it may be. I'm not against that idea. I just don't think Joe Shane's going to do it for all the reasons that I've expressed on this show, that I think what gives him the best chance to be able to keep his job is to draft a rookie quarterback this year, and he doesn't know where he's going to be picking in the future. So that's my mindset. As far as the Arch Manning stuff goes, I actually think Arch Manning's a really good player, and it has nothing to do with the fact that his last name's a Manning. But to Adriana's point, and Anthony as well, you can't stick around, especially if you're Joe Shane, and just be like, oh, yeah, let's win 4 games this year so we have a chance to draft a guy that we don't even know if he's going to come out to begin with, and I won't be the GM that gets to pick him. So that's not going to happen. It's just completely unrealistic that the Giants are just going to tank so they can get Arch Manning. You have a GM that's on the hot seat. He knows it. I'm not saying he's got to make the playoffs this year, but the team has to show some progression, and there's not even a guarantee that Arch is going to come out. You're talking about the Manning name. You see what some of these college athletes make today. There's no pressure for him. He already has a lot of money in the bank anyway with the family that he's with. I'm sure he's making a lot of money at the collegiate level. So I don't see any pressure for him to come out. You can't bank on that if you're the New York Giants.
Right. So I had to visit the press box before you answered. So I had to run out. Neil, thank you, says, having a debate with my friend who's the most talented wide receiver in Giants history. I have OBJ. He has Hakeem Nicks. I'm going Odell Beckham. I don't think there's ever been as far as pure talent, I don't think it's close. Hakeem Nicks may have been a better big-time receiver because he won a Super Bowl and he was amazing in that run in 2011 in the postseason, but no way. Talent-wise, Odell Beckham blows everybody away. I've never seen anybody that talented in a New York Giants uniform.
I would say if we're just talking talent, I would say Malik Neighbors might be second. I think Malik Neighbors' talent is off the charts. But yeah, the best wide receiver is Toomer when you just look at his career as a Giant. I still say Victor Cruz when you factor in the Super Bowl and had the best single season in New York Giants history at the wide receiver position. Plaxico Burress was so important to the upbringing of Eli and still had the single greatest game I've ever seen a New York Giant receiver have, the NFC Championship game against the Green Bay Packers where he undressed Al Harris. But if we're just talking talent, it's got to be Odell. Odell was an otherworldly talent at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I think it's Odell, and I think Plaxico is the one that comes close, though, just because depending on how you define talent, I mean, his physical acumen was so rare. The fact that he could move the way that he could at that size, Plaxico Burress was like absurdly talented and physically gifted. So he would be the only one that like really compares in that sense for me. But other than that, I agree with you, Chris. I don't know. I think OBJ's rookie season is the best wide receiver season in Giants history. That was just something unbelievable.
You would take it over the year that when we won the Super Bowl with Victor.
Well, I wouldn't. I'm taking the Super Bowl and Victor Cruz, but you
would take his year. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people might agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, because if you factor in the fact that he missed those 4 games, I mean, dude, the stat line that he put up, like we thought that he was going to be the next Randy Moss that season.
Yeah,
he's incredible. He's incredible.
Yeah, I think that's the best rookie wide receiver season ever. So even I know that Puka Nacua broke a record, and then Brock Bowers broke that record, and some stats have been broken by Malik Neighbors on OBJ, but a little bit of a different league now than it was then. Plus, missed those 4 games. If you look at it on a per game average, nobody was playing wide receiver like Odell Beckham Jr. was in 2014.
Yeah,
no. What do you think, Adriana?
I say OBJ, and I think that Malik is going to have the opportunity to come pretty close to him based on his rookie season. And same thing. You think like if you put him with Eli Manning in 2014 instead of OBJ, and Malik missed 2 games last year, would they have similar stats? I think so. Would have been. Oh, it's a real shame what happened with OBJ. It's feel really like that was the start of when things really fell off for us.
Cole, thank you. If you're Joe Shane, do you truly feel comfortable betting your job on quarterback prospects that quarterback needy teams at 1 or 2 are willing to trade down and miss out for? I would say yes. It depends on Joe Shane. If Joe Shane loves one of those guys, whether it's Ward or Sanders, absolutely. Because if he passes and they suck, he's not going to get to draft the quarterback.
Yeah, and let me ask the panel and the chat this question. If he doesn't take a quarterback in the first round this year and they win 6 games and they get Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, does he keep his job? If he doesn't have a rookie quarterback to go to sell Lamara, we're going to build with this guy going forward, and they win 6 games with. Well, if the answer is no, well then if we're thinking
6 games, they're picking 10th next year.
From Shane's perspective, he's got to draft a quarterback if he has the opportunity with that pick.
Yeah, I think Shane probably feels like he has to take a chance. He hasn't taken a chance at all up until this point, and it hasn't gotten him anywhere good. So, you're in a position to get a good quarterback, supposedly one that they like. And I think also you have to look at it as our quarterback rooms for the last 2 years were atrocious, just embarrassing to the NFL as a whole. So if we have Russ Wilson and Cam Ward, I think you have to feel like a little bit optimistic and feel like, okay, if Russ Wilson plays 6 games and he just looks okay, then but the rest of the team is serviceable. Like if the defense really comes through and it's the offense that's the problem, again, because the quarterback is holding us back, then at least you have Cam Ward. And at least you can say, we're going to give this kid the next 10 games or whatever to just see how it goes. And he's probably going to make rookie mistakes and whatever. But realistically, he's going to be better than Tommy DeVito. He's going to be better than Drew Lock. I mean, I hope so. Like you just got to think, well, he's the best of what we've had the last couple of years. And he has to take a risk at some point. It's either going to pay off or it's not, but you can't not take it.
We've definitely set the bar pretty low for that room.
Yeah.
Anthony, what do you think?
No, I don't think 6 wins is enough for him to win. I think, John Mara's comments at the end of the season, he made it pretty clear. Obviously, Mike Garafolo went and said, what he heard was that there was some sort of playoff mandate handed out from John Mara. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I think it's got to be closer to 500 than 6 wins is in order for these guys to keep their jobs.
JJ, thank you. He says, the guys nervous about the quarterback situation. Cook, Joe. I think everybody's got to be nervous. I think Joe Shane's nervous about the quarterback situation, honestly, because he doesn't know. He's trying, but, who the hell knows? And again, we know what's going on in free agency. Oh, by the way, going to get to this one, and then we're going to call it a night. Friday night's editions of Giants Collective are going to be they're going to be mailbag type of shows. So if you guys do have a question, please leave it in the comments section of this video. And next show on Friday night at 7:00, we will go through a few of them. We'll answer like 3 or 4 of those questions. So that's what's going to be on Friday till we get close to the draft. We might have a lot of things to talk about, but that is the plan. So if you have a question you want to ask it, just like I said, leave it in the comment section. We will do our best to answer it on Friday. John, thank you. He says, I was trying to say take advantage of the stacked defense class this year. I regret even mentioning Arch before, just saying take a quarterback next year. Well, I don't think anything it wasn't personal against you, John. It's just we're all content creators. We're all on YouTube. We're all on Twitter. We have all heard tank and get Arch Manning. Get Arch Manning. Wait for Arch Manning. It's not you, John. It's just the thought of we're just going to kick the can down the road and we're going to just get Arch Manning. Like Anthony said, like we're entitled to him. Like no matter where we're picking, no matter what we do, he's ours because Eli played for the Giants. It's not the case. You're not guaranteed to get Arch Manning at all at any point. So you can't go through.
And John, by the way, I don't think your idea is a bad one in terms of kicking the can down the road at the quarterback position. I just think with the state of the situation we're in, I don't think Joe Schoen could afford to kick the can down the road at the quarterback position. If it was Schoen year 1 or even year 2, they might very well do that. That's just my opinion, and we'll find out in a month. But by no means do I think it's a bad idea to take the best available player. And I don't even think Anthony, as much as he loves quarterbacks, would deny if Cam Ward's off the board, the best available player is either going to be Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. So I'm not against that idea at all. I just don't think it's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I'll also say to it, I think that, and I kind of made this point when the Stafford rumors were going on, while we feel pretty confident that Joe Schoen's going to do everything he can to get a quarterback because we think that's going to save him his job. I also think there's the frame of perspective where you do what the Chiefs and the Bills did, which is what I said when we were talking about the Stafford thing, where you build up the roster as great as you can, and then you sell the farm to go get the quarterback in the future, which I think is similar to what John is saying. So I actually don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility for the Giants to pass on a quarterback this year. I know we were saying that they probably need one in order for Shane to save his job. Not necessarily. If they end up winning 8 games with Rodgers, they just missed the playoffs, 8 games. Yeah, it's 6 games. I know is close, and we probably lean towards firing, but
I find it hard to find 8 wins on the schedule this year. I looked at the schedule last night. I was
me too. But you know what? I do remember we said that in 2022. True. The league changes so much every single year, and you really never know. And I know that there was probably a lot of Commanders fans that felt like, oh, we drafted a rookie quarterback this year. We're probably going to win 4 or 5 games, but anything above that is a nice surprise. They ended up going to the conference championship game. So you really never know in the NFL. It's a game-by-game basis. Half of the quarterbacks that we get, maybe we run into a gauntlet of just injured teams. It's totally possible. So, but again, I think to that point, though, there is an argument, and I know a lot of Giants fans made this argument last offseason. We weren't in position to nurture a rookie quarterback, and we still probably aren't. So that might be what Joe Schoen is thinking. You plug in Rodgers or Stafford is who he wanted, or Russell Wilson, and maybe for the next year, you just add as much talent as you can. You trade for veterans. You draft players at positions of need. You do everything you can. You just put as much talent as you possibly can onto the roster. And then in 2026, that's when you trade that 2027 first-round pick. You move up, and you go ahead and you take your quarterback then. That's what the Chiefs did. It's what the Bills did. It's what the Ravens did. That could be what the New York Giants are trying to do. So that, to John's question and his point, I totally do see that path being a possibility for the Giants here, but we just don't know yet because we're not close enough to the draft to know what Joe Schoen's plans are at the quarterback position.
All right. JC, thank you. Says regardless of the quarterback, we make the playoffs. I don't think anybody in this panel is going to disagree.
You never know. I'm not picking it for sure. I'm not picking it.
Quarterback makes a big difference, but you still need talent around you. I think the Giants have some talent, but I still think at the end of the day, inevitably, you don't go 3-14 without a lot of holes. It's not like it's just a couple of holes. There's a lot of holes in this team, and you can only fill so many of them in free agency and through the draft, and you got to hope that the players you draft perform. This year, I believe that Joe Schoen did have a good draft. I think a lot of those players were productive, but as you look at some of his other draft classes, not so much. Look at some of his free agent signings, not so much. So we got to hope that the trajectory he's on goes back to what he did last year, because I thought his free agent signings were better last year. Obviously, they won't talk about who he signed. They talk about who he let go. That's hanging over his head. instead of what he did, because I actually did do some nice things in free agency last year. I think he did nice things this year. I think he had a good draft last year, and hopefully he has another one this year. But I don't think anybody's going to disagree. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers makes us win 12 games. I don't think Russell Wilson makes us win 12 games. I don't think Cam Ward makes us win 12 games. No.
Nope.
But with that said, let's wrap it up. Another great edition. Appreciate you guys and lady doing the show. If you haven't done so, we had a big crowd tonight, by the way. It was almost 600 people in here.
Wow.
So big shout out to everybody in the chat. Still 550 in here. If you haven't done so, guys and girls, hit that thumbs up and make sure you subscribe. We do this twice a week now. We do it Wednesdays at 7 and Fridays at 7. So make sure you do it. And like I said, leave your questions in the comments section below this video, and we will take 3 or 4 really good ones. We'll decide, and we'll answer them on the next one. So with that said, for Adriana, Anthony, and the entertainer, we are going with another edition of Giants Collective. Enjoy the rest of your hump day. We'll see you next time. We out.